Settle down, brother. This is the Quarter Report powered by ENC.com. South Africa is a movie. Welcome to the watch party. At the end of one of the wildest weeks in modern South African history, and I include elections in that, we wait to hear what President Ramaphosa is going to say on Sunday. It's giving COVID family meeting vibes. It's giving generational crisis in South Africa, and the president is taking his time, consulting with stakeholders, talking to folks, and probably making strategic calls. And then on Sunday, he's going to make this big address to the nation. We're going to give you some small additional news, like the MK party also opening a charge against Senzo Mchunu, police minister, as well as Shadrach Sibia. But mainly, we're going to talk in this episode about two things. One, what are Ramaphosa's options on Sunday? Because it's hard to tell what his options are going to be. We reported yesterday, of course, about how 3 different standing committees in Parliament are going to do investigations. They're not going to have conclusive findings by Sunday. Absolutely not. So he's going to have to say something based on what he's been able to gather from strategic phone calls and meetings with different people in the next literally handful of days. And then the second thing is whether or not, and I know we keep talking about this, but really this time whether the government of national unity will survive this for a lot of reasons. One, because the way the DA is acting in Parliament right now, voting against budgets, will stop the appropriation bill, which will cause close to what the Americans will call a government shutdown, turning off of the taps of all of the different budgets across government. But two, because the ANC top brass have been postponing their NEC meeting, their National Executive Committee meeting, most believe because they've been trying to avoid that meeting because the top brass don't want to end the GNU with the DA in it, but it seems there's a massive lobbying group within that NEC that's going to argue that we need to kick the DA out. So they've been postponing that, but it is now going to happen in about 2 weeks' time. And so more than ever before, I would argue, we now need to ask if the government of national unity will survive this, because it's not looking good, bruv. And remember, of course, as I always say, you can watch the entire show on enca.com and nowhere else. If you're watching on YouTube, click on the link in the description. But the main thing is that Cyril Ramaphosa is speaking to us on Sunday. I'm assuming it's going to be Sunday night. It always is. I don't know why he likes sunset or after. That clearly seems to be when he feels like he's feeling himself and kicking the hardest. But he's speaking to us on Sunday night. And on the one hand, as you know, I have to say, finally, why hasn't he done so already? I feel like he should have done so already. On the other hand, I can understand why he, not necessarily as the president, but as the president of the country, but as the president of the ANC, is taking his time. Because Senzo Mchunu and the other implicated people are incredibly powerful. Senzo Mchunu, I will remind you, was KZN Premier. He was a key reason why Ramaphosa was able to defeat Jacob Zuma, because he switched from Zuma's camp to Ramaphosa's camp. He's got enormous sway, backing, and following in KwaZulu-Natal, which is a province which the ANC has to recover. They dropped from over 50%, I think, in 2019, down to just under 20% in 2024, a historic collapse. And they need to recover those voters. KZN is, I think, still the second most populous province in terms of voter numbers after Gauteng. It's really important to them. And so he needs to try and figure out what to do. As I have said, I think that he should suspend, maybe call it special leave, but he should put this police minister on special leave because in this unique situation, the police minister is being investigated and has the power to tamper with or get involved in investigations into himself. Maybe he should also, President Ramaphosa might, as an option, think to himself, cool, we don't want to make it seem like we're presuming Police Minister Mkhwanazi guilty. And so we are also going to put General Mkhwanazi on special leave. Again, not to make him look guilty or wrong, but just to remove the two people from the ability to influence the process. Of course, as you've seen this week, there have been explicit threats to violence and uproar and civil unrest in KZN, similar to the July 2021 riots, if Mkhwanazi is touched. And by touched, the people who are saying this mean basically suspended, fired, or killed. We know that there's been extra security placed on General Mkhwanazi's house, which I think is a perfectly reasonable thing to do. I don't think we need to read any more deeply into that. It's just a sensible thing to do. I'm sure that he's received death threats. This is the kind of thing that happens when you expose or at least put claims against people of this level of power involving criminal syndicates, politicians, the judiciary. Oh, yes. So the Constitutional Court Chief Justice Maya has come out, or at least called for Mkhwanazi to provide evidence of what he claimed about being certain members of the judiciary being compromised. And they've seemed quite offended by that allegation, or at least offended that there was an allegation without evidence, because the judiciary has come out and said, we really need to and want to deal with this, provide us the evidence so that we can investigate. So there are all these different moving parts. And I think that's why the president is taking his time. He needs to figure out if he's going to suspend or fire him, or at least place Mchunu on special leave. What are the optics of that going to be? He needs to figure out what he's going to do about Higher Education Minister Nkabane, who's currently under investigation also, with charges against her on the way also, for lying to Parliament about the CETA deal, or the CETA board members that she put in place and then took away, and then said there was a special advisory panel, and there wasn't a special advisory panel, named the people allegedly on this panel, who then came out in public and said that no such panel ever happened involving them. And as Times Live reported on this morning and explained, the dynamic is also that those are two Zulu ministers. And if you are worried about the ANC's voter base and support in KwaZulu-Natal, as Ramaphosa is, you have to think about that. If they place these ministers on special leave or fire them, are they going to put different reputable Zulu leaders from the ANC in power? Who are they going to be? Will that be accepted by the ANC National Executive Committee? As we'll talk about in a bit, that's the big threat to the GNU right now, is this impending NEC meeting that has been suspended for months. And the fact that the DA is now voting in such a way to block budgets of departments that could ultimately threaten the provision of funding for this financial year to the entire government. We're going to get to that in a bit. So these are all the things that Ramaphosa is weighing up. And I imagine he is going to come out with some read of Mkhwanazi's claims. I don't think he can come out and just say, hey, so like, as I said in my tweet on Monday, yeah, we're looking into it. We're going to figure it out. I really hope he doesn't call for a commission of inquiry, because people are sick of that. People are sick of waiting for a year to find stuff out. We need decisive investigation and decisive action. But he's got a real challenge on his hands. Senzo Mchunu was incredibly influential. The allegations around Matlatla also extend to Becky Cele, the previous police minister, another ANC big shot, who's a big shot in the security forces in the police. Ramaphosa has got a tough job in his hands strategically to figure out what he should do and how he should handle it. And so we wait to see what he's going to do on Sunday. I cautiously think he has to do something more than just providing new information, more than just evolving his press statement from earlier in the week. I think he has to suspend or place on special leave one or a handful of people. And I think he has to give us a timeline by which he says these investigations into the documentation and the evidence will be complete, so that he can then make decisions. Because remember, it's not just Mchunu and Mkhwanazi or Shadrach Sabir. It's Dumisani Khumalo, who was arrested, the head of police crime intelligence. Another Zulu man from KZN. There are so many interlocking dynamics. As we reported on earlier in the week, the fact that there are social media rumblings about there being an anti-Zulu, or like a purge of Zulu men, powerful Zulu men in SAPS, because Khumalo is Zulu and because Mkhwanazi is also Zulu, but it's more complicated because Mchunu is Zulu. And so there's all these weird dynamics that Ramaphosa has to try to handle. And I think we need to be keeping all of that in mind when he addresses us on Sunday night. In the meantime, though, the big reporting this morning from Times Live, News 24, and a bunch of others is the fact that the GNU might really now be on death's door. And it's been contributed to by this Mchunu situation and Nkabane, the higher education minister. But it's mainly the fact that it looks like the ANC is finally going to have their first NEC meeting since, I think, March. It was before the DA moved to stop the fiscal framework for Budget 2.0, for sure. And then later went to court, which contributed to massive anger within the ANC, NEC against the Democratic Alliance. And to be fair, the DA has crossed with the ANC too, and there are people within the DA who want the DA to walk from the GNU. But at the moment, it seems like the top brass and the FedEx of the DA is like, if we are kicked out by the ANC, that'll be good optically for us. Otherwise, we're not leaving, because we want to make it look like the ANC is unwilling to govern and take criticism and co-govern with another party, another significantly powerful party. And so if the DA was to be kicked out, the ANC would probably try to draft Action SA in its place and would give it an incredibly slim majority in the GNU, of the GNU in Parliament. And they would be vulnerable to being shaken down by smaller parties on basically every single vote, because the margin is so small that if even the smaller parties said, we don't feel like actually going with this unless you give us some kind of concession, then they wouldn't get the votes through. But now, finally, after months of the top brass of the ANC postponing NEC meetings, seemingly to avoid giving NEC members an opportunity to push for and vote by majority on kicking the DA out, seeming to avoid that, to try and make sure that that doesn't happen, the NEC meeting seems like it's going to happen in a few weeks' time. And it's going to happen in light of the decisions Ramaphosa is going to make and announce on Sunday. It's going to involve talking about Senzo Mchunu and the reputational damage to the ANC of these allegations from General Mkhwanazi. It's going to involve talking about the investigations from the standing committees into Mkhwanazi's claims and evidence. It's going to involve how to manage the fallout for the ANC reputationally with the 2026 local government elections coming literally second half of next year. And it's going to involve anger and fury that the DA has taken another police case and filed another charge against another ANC minister and moved to try and get ANC ministers out. Because remember, the DA has now decided they're going to vote against budgets of the Higher Education Department and of the Human Settlements Department because they're led by extremely, let's just say, under a cloud ministers Simelane from Human Settlements and Nkabane from Higher Education. And the problem is, I know that the budget kept getting kicked down the road and people were like, how can South Africa run? Like, where's the money? And obviously, South Africa's government has provisions for that it's something like you can spend within last year's appropriation bill up to like 45% around about of last year's budget for a while. But after a certain cutoff date of a handful of months into the new financial year, you can only go down to like 10%. If you haven't passed a new appropriation bill, which means that suddenly people aren't going to be able to pay salaries. The functions of government aren't going to be able to keep going. Departments are going to be operating on skeletal staff with virtually no operational ability, very close to what the Americans call a government shutdown. We're kind of getting there. We're getting closer to there. And Zugzwang, or whatever it was yesterday, the ANC is going to be forced, the president's going to be forced to make a move. Either kick the DA out and try to create a new GNU coalition that can vote through these budgets and keep those ANC ministers, or kick the ANC ministers so the DA will vote with those departmental budgets, but lose unbelievable face by being forced to get rid of your own ministers because the DA told you to, under threat of the DA thwarting your budgets of your departments. Now that is worst case scenario, I think, for the ANC, would be the most humiliating and the most damaging to their reputation and also their sense of pride, like their own egos. So I'd be amazed if we got to that outcome. But then what would happen instead? Maybe the government of national unity is more than ever before under serious